Hello and welcome to Nebula Talks. Before we begin, we have a few updates and reminders for you. We would love to have you be part of our Nebula community. And you can do so by logging on to www.nebula.com, where you can join communities related to your area of interest, register for upcoming Nebula Talks, book one-to-one skylifts, and view other upcoming events. You can also take this opportunity to connect with fellow learners or the speaker by sending a connection request. When you connect with the speaker, you will be able to contact them directly as well as receive updates about their upcoming talks. Kindly note that during the session, you will not be able to switch on your camera or unmute your mic. To ask questions during the talk, go to the audience chat, type your question, and select Post Your Question. If your question has not been answered during the talk, you will be notified once it's been answered, or if your question has not been answered during the talk, you can go to www.nebula.com and spin a quest, and your questions will be answered. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this talk broadens your horizons and takes you to new learning heights. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, and my apologies for the delay in starting today. We had a few technical issues, but I think we're up and running again, so welcome everybody. It's good to have you all here. We have some new faces, so welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you so much again for your patience, and yeah, let's just get started, get right into it. All right, my name is Sarah, and today we'll be discussing different vocabulary and phrases that you can use for the IELTS speaking exam. All right, while I share my screen, I'm going to post a poll. All right, and you'll be able to see it in the audience chat. Here we go. It's to do with idioms. All right, so have a read through. All right. Okay. Okay. So basically, I'll read it out for you all as well. I have a bone to pick with you about this. Here, bone to pick expresses what? Does it express desire? Does it express anger? Does it express a selfish motive or a selfless motive? Go ahead and tell me in the comments. Just go ahead and click what you feel this idiom means. Let's get our answers going. Anybody? All right, so I'll just tell you. Here, this idiom basically is expressing anger. So when somebody says they have a bone to pick with you, they have an issue with something that you've done or something that you've said, and they say the phrase or the idiom is, I have a bone to pick with you. And now why I put this in was because these are some kind of phrases, these idioms are something that you can use during your speaking exam to boost your score and, you know, just to make it look, make your answers look a bit more well-rounded. All right. Okay, so let's go straight into it. I have the PPT on screen. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's just have an introduction to the IELTS. For those of you who are hearing about the IELTS exam for the first time and are not sure about it, I'll just give you a brief about it. And for those of you who already did your research and you know about the IELTS and you know what it's about, this is just a little recap for you, okay? So IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's an exam for non-native English language speaking students and or working professionals who are looking to work, study, or migrate abroad. All right, this exam tests your 4 language skills, which would be your reading, your writing, your listening, and your speaking. And as I've said already, we'll be discussing the speaking side of it today. All right, so let's just get a little familiar with the speaking section. Okay, so the speaking section, the IELTS speaking section has 3 parts. It's divided into 3 different parts. And the time it takes to complete this whole section would be around 11 to 14 minutes. And you'll be talking about general topics. So what happens is part 1 would be like an introduction, a self-introduction. The examiner will it's like a slight interview of sorts. And they'll just ask for your identification, ask about where you're from, things like that, just general information. And it branches onto a few more questions about maybe your hometown or your family or something like that. So that's what it's called, the introduction and interview section. Part two is the next a bit longer section where you'll be given a card with little prompts on it and a question, and you'll just have to talk about that. You'll get 1 minute to prepare, and then you'll have to speak for 2 minutes continuously. The examiner will keep a strict keep a strict watch on the time as you talk for those 2 minutes. So make sure you have enough content to speak for 2 minutes and use your preparation time well. And then it branches on into part three, where from part two, they'll go into a little bit more deeper topics. Again, it'll be general, but you'll be describing things and talking about a topic in more detail. All right, so that is what this speaking section consists of. All right, it's also important to know about the assessment criteria to know what you're being assessed on while you're doing the exam. So when you're practicing, you can look at the different criteria and say, okay, maybe I need to work a little bit more on this, or how can I boost my lexical resource score or pronunciation score, things like that. So let's just quickly go through that as well. So you'll be assessed on 4 criteria, which are listed here. First of all, fluency and coherence. And here the examiner is looking at how easy you're able to speak at length and logically develop your ideas. So they're trying to see if you are able to speak for a very long time without pausing, without hesitating, without so much silence in between, and also how you structure your answer and how you speak those answers out. Next one would be pronunciation, the ability to be understood. Now here, a lot of people get confused and they think it has to do with accent. I'll tell you right here, your accent does not matter during the speaking exam. It's just about how you pronounce your words and make sure that you're speaking clearly. All right, the way you enunciate, the way the words are, the sound is coming out of your mouth, intonation, how you vary your voice, lows and highs, not speaking monotonous, but shifting your tone. All right, all that is looked in pronunciation. Then we have lexical resource, where the examiner is looking at the use of the wide range of vocabulary that you have displayed while you're speaking. All right, and this is very important for today's talk because this is how you could boost your score with these phrases and vocabulary and idioms as such. And last but not least, grammatical range and accuracy, where the examiner is looking at the presentation of grammar, how well you're speaking, your sentence structures, and things like that. All right, so again, this is something that's quite important for you all to just kind of note down and understand so that you know when you're practicing, these are the things that you can work on. All right. Okay, so let's get straight into it and let's learn some vocabulary, some phrases that you can use, and some idioms as well. Let's go. But before we do that, let's understand why it's important to use different phrases and different vocabulary, put those in there during your IELTS speaking exam. First of all, when you do this, it displays advanced skills, therefore boosting your band score for the lexical resource criteria. As I said before, when we were looking at the criteria, lexical resource is a big one. So when you display these vocabulary and phrases, it boosts your score, which is really good because at the end of the day, these scores will be averaged out and then you'll be presented with your final score for the speaking exam. So it's really good to boost this. And this is an area that some people find very difficult, especially, first of all, some people already find speaking difficult, and then they're even under more pressure during the exam. So by learning these phrases and things like that, it's quite an easy boost for your score. Second of all, it makes the conversation more interesting. When you put in a couple of phrases, it shows the examiner that you're kind of interested, not that they're really looking at that, but the flow becomes better. So the flow will be a bit more casual. It's not super formal as well, and it'll kind of loosen you up. So that's why it's a little important to know these things. Alrighty. So first things first, here are some phrases for when you're introducing personal experiences. Now, you'll be facing these kind of phrases or using these kind of phrases usually during part one, where you'll be asked about, personal experiences, probably something to do with your hometown or your family or your friends or your daily routine and things like that. So in order to introduce these, here are some phrases that you can use, and we'll go through these one by one. All right. So first of all, you could say something like, in my experience. This also works for part 3 of the exam and or part 2 when you're asked to give an opinion. So you could say something like, if you're asked about, maybe in part 1 you're talking about your hometown, and the examiner might go on to ask you, what do you find best about your hometown, or what is some kind of tourist attraction in your hometown? So you can kind of use this phrase and say, in my experience, I find that we have a lot of beaches, and you can go to those beaches, and tourists find their way to the beaches, etc. Okay, so that's one way you can use this. Another one, again, is I remember when. So maybe a question could come up, and the examiner might ask you, what is your most favorite childhood memory? You never know, it could be a question. So you can go on to say, instead of saying repeating it, what happens is we tend to repeat the question that the examiner asks us, which there again you'll be marked down, so you can rephrase it and present it in a better way. And you could say something like, I remember when I was such and such years old, maybe let's say 8 years old, I went on a holiday and it was the best trip of my life, etc., etc. So that's how you can use this phrase. All right. And then you can go on to say, let's take that same example. What happened was, so you can describe. So you're giving a personal experience and you can say this phrase. And then one time, when, or there was something else, you can use this phrase as well as back when I was such and such years old. So this is describing a time previously. So it shows the examiner that you are able to speak in the present, past, or future by using these phrases. All right. Okay, next one we're going to look at phrases for expressing personal opinion. So again, this usually happens during part 3 of the exam, where the examiner might ask you, what do you feel about? So if you're given a topic in task 2 to talk about your hometown, or maybe just a travel experience that you've had. So maybe that's going to be on the card, and you have to describe that travel experience. The follow-up questions for part 3 might be something where the examiner might go off a little bit, same topic, same talking about travel, but they might just go into another topic about tourism, relating it to travel. So they might ask you, do you feel like more tourists are coming to your hometown? Or do you feel like more people are traveling? What do you feel about it? So these kind of questions might come up. And here are some phrases that you can use to express your personal opinion, mainly during part 3. But if you feel like you can fit this in anywhere else, go ahead and do that. All right. So you can say personally speaking, or personally, if we're taking the example that I just said about tourism, personally, I feel like, or I find that tourists are coming to my hometown because they prefer the weather. There are so many tourist attractions such as beaches and or temples, or a famous monument that people come to see. Okay, so there's how you can express that by saying personally. Or you can say another way of expressing your opinion would be, in my view, or in my point of view, I feel like. So you can say that as well. Or you could say, for me, I think, right? So that's being personal to yourself, and you're expressing how you feel about it. Or you can say, if the examiner gives some kind of contradicting opinion, they might say one thing and you might disagree with that, and it's completely fine that you disagree with the examiner. That's totally fine, as long as you express it, because again, remember, this is an English speaking exam, so the examiner is not too worried about the content, but how your content is presented. Okay, so if you don't agree, you can say, as I see it, I feel that though this is how I feel about it, I disagree, or something like that. So you can put in that phrase. Okay, and then you can also go on to say, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like this is this, and give your personal opinion as well. Okay, so these are all phrases that you can use to express your personal opinion. All right, now we're going to look at phrases for speculating and expressing possibility. So basically what's going to happen is you will probably be asked a question that's towards the future. So it might be something like, about your city or about roles in the family. And the examiner might ask you to imagine maybe a different situation of one that you're in, or talking about the future. So speculating can help you give a more elevated response. It can give you a more rounded answer. So here are some phrases that can show that. All right. So the examiner could ask you something like, how could this change in the next 10 to 20 years? So here what's going to happen is your answer is going to be in the future tense. So the examiner is looking to see whether you can speak in the future tense. All right. So you can say something like, I suppose. I suppose this could happen, or I suppose in the next 10, 20 years, whatever year, in the next 15 years, the city that I live in can change. There'll be more development, a metro connection, etc., etc. You can just go on and develop those ideas by saying, I suppose. Or you could say, it's possible that there could be improvement, or it's possible that there might not be any improvement. It could go both ways, depending on the question you're asked. Okay. Again, you can also say, I would imagine that. So obviously you're not sure what's going to happen in the future. You don't know what's going to happen in 10, 15 years, 20 years. You don't know, but you could say, I would imagine that there would be more transport facility, or I would imagine if we're talking about transport and growth of a city, for example, I would imagine that maybe there will be more buildings, there'll be more infrastructure, etc. Okay, you could also say, I'd say that, and go on to give your answer, or perhaps, or I think it's likely or unlikely. So if the examiner asks you a question, how do you feel? Or they give you a statement and you say, and you don't feel that's likely, you can say, I think it's unlikely that that would happen, or I think it's likely that it could happen. Okay, it's all about how you answer the question using the right tense as well. So here, if we're talking about the future, because it's speculation, we're not sure, we're assuming, so it'll be in the future tense. Alrighty, okay. So now we're going to talk about phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. And like I mentioned before, it's totally fine to agree and or disagree with the examiner, but make sure when you're agreeing and disagreeing with the examiner, you're not just giving a yes or no, you're adding to your answer, because again, what happens is if you keep your answers short, okay, if you keep your answers short, what's going to happen is they're going to have to keep asking you questions, because again, the examiner is on a strict time, it's a time constricted exam. So the lesser you answer, the more questions you're going to get. And what's going to happen is it's going to get difficult for you to answer those questions, because if you stop answering at just yes or no, they'll have to make up for that time. So it's better that you, instead of just saying yes, give a well-rounded answer and say, yes, I suppose that, and continue, or yes, I believe so, or anything, whatever fits in depending on the question. All right, so here you go. Phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. If you want to express agreement, you can say, I totally agree. All right, I totally agree with you. And then you don't stop there, expand your answer. So whatever it is, so the examiner might say something like, in the next 5 to 10 years, I feel that, or do you feel that the global warming is going to happen? And I mean, global warming is already happening, but global warming will start to deteriorate the Earth's surface or the environment or whatever it is. And obviously that's going to be that's something true. So you can say, I totally agree with that. I do feel like, and then paraphrase whatever the examiner has said and put it in different words, convey the same meaning and express your point. All right. And then if you really, really agree with the examiner, you could say, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, don't just stop there, develop that answer. Go back and paraphrase. Again, let's just talk about paraphrasing for a second. Paraphrasing just means saying the same thing in a different way, so that you're not exactly lifting words from what the examiner is saying, because there you will lose marks. And you can just demonstrate that you know how to paraphrase and that you've understood the examiner's question and you're answering it in a different way. Okay, so yes, I couldn't agree with you more, and then expand that answer. All right, and then again, you're absolutely right, right? And then again, develop that answer. All right, there's no doubt about it. So these are kind of phrases, especially the way that you say it and then develop it will show the examiner, and it'll make you comfortable as well when you're delivering your answers. All right, so let's look at when you're, yeah, here you go. Definitely, absolutely, precisely as well. You can say these words to, agree with the examiner or agree with the point. Now, when you want to express disagreement, here are some phrases that you can use. You can say, I'm afraid I disagree. All right. And also, when you're saying these phrases, let me just add in, your tone also plays a very big part in this. So when you're expressing yourself, whether it be agreeing or disagreeing, show that in your tone. This works for the pronunciation criteria, where you can boost your score and boost your marks in that criteria. So if you agree, that excitement should kind of come out, not be super expressive about it, but just show that in your face and your tone, and the examiner will be able to pick that up. So, and also if you're disagreeing as well, you can say, I'm afraid I disagree. And your facial expressions also, again, you're not being marked on your facial expressions, but all that contributes to your score. All right. And then a polite way of saying it as well would be, I see your point, but, and then express your point of view. So if you disagree with that, go ahead and disagree and then expand your answer with the disagreeing point. Okay. And then you can always say, that's not always true. If it's something that you feel strongly about, that, hey, no, there's another answer to this, say that. That's not always true, and give your point of view and say, actually, this is how it is, or actually, this is the way I see it, and kind of bring in that. All right. And you can say not necessarily. Okay. That's another way of just saying no. Instead of just saying no, you can just say not necessarily and continue with your point. Okay. Did you hear how I kind of changed my tone? And the tone of my voice kind of went, intonation kind of went up and down, it kind of fluctuated. So that's how you also express yourself. So be aware of that as well. All right, here's another one. That's one way of looking at it. However, so you're not really disregarding anybody's point of view. Again, not only for the IELTS speaking exam, this works for everyday life. Like even when you pass this exam, you can also use these phrases. So make sure that you're practicing them correctly, but we'll get to that. So another polite way of disagreeing would be, that's one way of looking at it. However, here's another way, and present the other point of view. All right? Okay. Now here, asking for clarification. As I've said before, you can also agree and disagree with the examiner, but it's also okay to ask for clarification from the examiner. Again, you're new, even though you've been practicing so much, even though you've been hearing different ways of speaking, and however you choose to practice for the exam, there's always going to be, during the exam, you might start feeling nervous, so you might not hear properly, or you might just get jittery or stressed out, and you'll just have to keep asking for clarification or asking them to repeat it. Though that is fine, you are allowed to ask for clarification if you do not understand something, but try not to do it too often as well. Try to be a little bit attentive so that the examiner understands that, okay, even though I have to repeat it, eventually they understand. So that's a good way of buying time also, but make sure you don't use it too much or buy too much time. Make sure that you don't give silence also. But another way to overcome that, just to get you thinking about your answer, would be asking for clarification. All right, so here are some ways you can do that. You can say, I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you please repeat? Okay, that's totally fine. All right, or you can say, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I didn't quite catch that, or I didn't catch that. Okay, or could you please repeat the question? Or could you repeat the question, please? Or you could say, could you say that again? Any of these polite ways of asking is fine. Okay, now in part 3, you can also ask the examiner to rephrase the question if necessary. So you might not understand the way they're asking it. So you can say, if you want to do that, you can say something like, could you please explain by whatever it is, or could you explain what you meant by that? And they'll rephrase the question to help you. Or could you explain the question, please? Or sorry, could you rephrase that? Now, see, that's not an issue to ask the examiner, because the examiner is not there to pinpoint you and say, oh, okay, you haven't understood it. They are there to kind of help you as well. They're not trying to dock marks. All right, so it's okay to ask them. If you're unable to answer the question, that's fine. Go ahead and ask them to use these phrases to ask and they'll rephrase it in such a way that it's easier for you to understand. So in that time, while they're rephrasing the question, also have in mind the question that they've asked before, so that you can start generating your answer so that you can speak. So you eliminate that silence. All right, because again, silence is a problem as well during the exam. So make sure you're at least pausing for a few seconds if needed, and then go ahead and start answering. All right. Okay, now let's move on to some idioms that you can use for your speaking exam. Okay, so let's just discuss what an idiom is first. It's kind of a funny word, but anyway, basically an idiom is a phrase or expression that generally has a non-literal meaning. The meaning cannot be directly understood by reading each word. So for example, let's say let's take the speaking exam, for example, and you got a good mark. So you would probably be like, I was over the moon that I got an 8.5 on the IELTS speaking exam. So here the idiom is over the moon. All right, so that is basically the non-literal meaning. What we think it is maybe somebody going over the moon or jumping over the moon or flying over the moon. But actually, what it means is that you were really happy or you were ecstatic about your speaking exam score. But you've just said it in another way, and that's exactly what an idiom is. So let's go on to look at a few more idioms that you could use during your speaking exam. Oop, there they all together. So here you go. One of them would be to be on top of the world. So ideally, that means you're just feeling like, like a big shot. You're on top of the world. And you can use this during your exam, maybe to express how you're feeling at some point. If something like really good has happened to you and the examiner asks about it, you can say, yeah, if it's something about the job, about your job, you can, if they say something like, tell me about your work, what do you do? And if you just kind of briefly say, oh, I got this job, if you happen to just get this job, you can say, yes, I just got this job and I felt on top of the world because it was my dream job, etc., etc. All right, same thing works for cloud nine. To be on cloud nine literally does not mean a cloud that's shaped like a nine. It means that, kind of on top of the world, over the moon, kind of floating in happiness. That's basically what it means. So you can find out how to use that as well. Also, you could say something like, if my memory serves me well. All right, so this works for questions that take you back to the past. If they ask you about your favorite childhood memory, for example, that's the best example that I could use here. So you could say something like, if my memory serves me well, I always remember, for example, going to my grandparents' house during the holidays and spending time with them and elaborating that point. Okay, again, over the moon we spoke about once in a blue moon. So that basically means it happens very rarely. So if it's something like, for example, if you're asked about travel, they could ask you something like, how often do you travel? So you can be like, I don't travel much. I only travel once in a blue moon, that too if it's necessary, etc., etc. It makes my blood boil. This is a good idiom and phrase to use probably during part 3 of the exam, where you're asked for your opinion. And if there's something that the examiner has asked you about a certain topic, because again, remember, these topics branch from part 2. So it'll go on to a little deeper topic where you have to delve a little bit and express yourself even more. So if there's something about the topic that you do not like, that kind of irks you, you can say, it makes my blood boil. So maybe, again, let's talk about tourism. If they ask you about what are the tourist attractions, and then maybe you go on to talk about, see, the problem is with tourists when they come to my town, they leave a lot of garbage behind, and it makes my blood boil because it's making my city dirty, etc. Something like that. So it's to express something that you feel very strongly about and something that irks you or angers you. So there's a phrase that you can use, probably mostly in part 3. But if it does fit in appropriately in part 1 or part 2, you can use that as well. All right, to change one's mind. There's another idiom, a blessing in disguise. Okay, if something, you were all happy to go for something and something comes in the way and ruins your trip, let's say, for example, and you find out that maybe it was a good thing that happened because something bad had happened, and that's why the trip got postponed or delayed or canceled or whatever, it was a blessing in disguise. All right, actions speak louder than words. On a daily basis, this is some common phrase that we hear most of the time. So I don't think it's anything new for us, but yeah, actions speak louder than words. So again, you can fit most of these idioms in part 3 of the exam. Alrighty. Okay, so let's look at some do's and don'ts about using vocabulary and phrases and or idioms during the exam. All right. So let's look at the do's first. Okay, so first of all, be natural. So the tendency, what happens is we muck up so much, and that's another point that will be on the don't side. So hang on. Make sure this flows naturally. Just be natural when you're talking. No need to put on an accent. No need to memorize answers and come in. It should be a candid, spontaneous conversation. Okay, so make sure you're natural. Okay, do use idioms, phrases, and vocabulary appropriately. All right, so that means know the phrases, know where you can use them, know where you can use these idioms or vocabulary, and make sure you're using them appropriately. And again, this goes with being natural, speak spontaneously. All right. Again, like I said, it should be a candid conversation, not something that you've mugged up, memorized, and you're coming and sitting for the exam. Because remember, whatever you've practiced might not come on the exam. That exact topic might not come on the exam, or it might be asked in a different way. Okay, so you cannot really predict what's going to come on the exam, but you should be practicing and not just assume that, okay, I'm just going to practice talking about travel and my family and my hometown, and that's what's going to happen on the exam. It might just be that the examiner will ask you what your daily routine is like, or if you're working or studying and how that's like, or about your friends, or about whether you go out during the evenings or something like that. So make sure that you've gone through all the topics, but you're still speaking spontaneously. And the only way that'll happen is if you're practicing. All right. Again, that leads me to my next point, and that is my favorite point of all time about the IELTS exam, because I cannot stress this enough that practice is everything. Okay, so practice speaking about different topics with native and non-native speakers. All right, this is very important. If you don't have anybody around, so you practice with your family, practice with your friends, and if they're not around, practice in the mirror. Just get yourself speaking with whoever. Now, the thing is, if you're speaking with native English speakers, that's good for you as well, because they'll be able to help you out, correct you where you're going a little wrong, or improve your answers. And when you're speaking to non-native speakers as well, they'll be able to understand and they'll also be able to learn. So make sure you're practicing with both, if not with somebody in front of the mirror, and that also helps boost your confidence. All right, so let's look at some of the don'ts. All right, don't use complicated vocabulary or phrases if you're unsure or you do not know the meaning. Now, the tendency is, I've just given a talk about the useful phrases that you can use. Just hold on a minute though. Don't feel the need to use all of this. So what happens is we might get over enthusiastic and we might start putting these phrases and it might, what happens is it just sounds like a whole bunch of phrases and not a lot of content, right? You don't want your answer to just be a bunch of phrases. The examiner is looking for these phrases as well as how you develop the next few sentences, giving your opinion. Okay, so make sure that it's not only phrases, it is also developing the ideas, as well as if you're unsure about the meaning or you don't know what it means or you don't feel like it fits in, it's safer to leave it out because it's worse to put in these phrases inappropriately. Okay, so learn them, learn the meanings of these vocabulary and idioms and phrases, okay, but don't, make sure that you use them appropriately. All right, and again, don't give out memorized answers. So like I said, it goes in with speaking spontaneously. Okay, make sure that you're not reciting a chunk of memorized paragraphs in your brain, because the examiner will immediately pick that up and it will jot down your scores. So make sure that it's candid. Try and manipulate your answers. You might have a chunk in your head, but make sure that it's appropriate. So again, if you've memorized content for speaking about your family. You know, there are 5 people in my family. We live here. We live in this hometown. I live over here, but I come here. I live in Bangalore, but I come to Kerala for my holidays to spend time with my family because that's my hometown. But the examiner is asking you about your friends, and you go and recite this. Do you see how that doesn't work? So make sure that whatever you're learning and whatever you're practicing, you're not mugging up answers that you can use. All right. So those are some tips for you as well that you can use while you're practicing your speaking exam as well as during the speaking exam. All right. Okay, so we've come to the end of the talk. Now we're on to the audience Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the audience chat. Now, how to do that is you just have to type your question, and once you type your question, before you hit enter, you'll see post as a quest. So go ahead and put that up. What's going to happen is if your question is not answered during today's talk, it will already be on nebula.com and you will be alerted once your question has been answered. So go ahead. Oh, okay. Yep. Let's just have a look at the poll question. Yeah, I have a bone to pick with you. Yep. Yes, it is expressing anger. All right. So yeah, another thing that you can do to practice getting your vocabulary up or these phrases is do read. read, read, read. You can pick up different vocabulary. And if there's a word that you don't understand, go ahead and correlate it with the dictionary definition. Understand where you can use it. Use the dictionary, use Google, use whatever you can to understand. Maybe keep a vocabulary diary. All right, words that you feel like, yes, I can use it. It's not really specific for a certain topic. You can go ahead and keep a vocabulary diary. Maybe learn new words every day. There are a lot of sites that do word of the day or phrase of the day or something like that. So go ahead and boost your vocabulary skills, activate your vocabulary, get talking, get speaking. Also with idioms, there are a lot of sites that have, idiom for the day or what does this mean, just like we did here. So yeah, just get a whole bunch of understanding, not only for the speaking exam, guys, you can also build your vocabulary for everyday life, and you can always use this when you're speaking in general. All right. Okay, I also asked beforehand, what do you find most difficult about the IELTS speaking exam? So I've given options like you might get too nervous to speak, unable to understand the question, too conscious to speak, and or other. If there's anything else that you find difficult about the speaking exam, do tell me below. All right, so I see that a lot of people say that they are unable to understand the question. Good thing we talked about some phrases so that would help us to ask the examiner to rephrase the question if we don't understand. And also, yes, again, it is fine that you get nervous and you feel nervous to speak on the day. Again, this to boost your confidence, what you can do is practice, 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 practice with whoever's around you, practice by yourself. Just get your confidence going and make sure that on the day you are ready and confident to speak. All right, maybe you don't have enough time to speak about whatever is there. You might have so many ideas that you want to get everything out. Just remember that the speaking exam lasts for 11 to 14 minutes. So don't worry, you don't have to go all out. Sometimes when we speak too much, if we're not confident enough, we might tend to go here and there with our grammar and our sentence structure. So make sure that you say enough. Don't say too much, don't say too little, all right? And yes, the examiner is there to stop you if you have gone over. So especially in part 2 and or part 3. Part 2, especially when you have to speak for 2 whole minutes, there is a timer. The examiner is keeping a close eye on the time, all right? So they will stop you in between, and don't worry if they stop you, that just means you've gone over time and they have to keep to that time. So it's not like you've done anything wrong, or maybe they just heard enough and they want to move on to the next question. All right. Again, if you're keeping quiet also and you don't have much to say, the examiner will keep asking you questions. And the more questions they ask, it could tend to get more difficult. So make sure that whatever they're asking, you try and speak as much as you can about it. Again, on the card during task 2, you will have different prompts. So use those as well. Make use of your 1 minute preparation time before task 2 starts. Okay. All right, again, unable to answer the question. Yep, you might not be able to answer the question, and that's where silence comes in. So try to avoid silence during the speaking exam. Too much silence is a bit of a minus point. So make sure that you can use these phrases to just buy a little time and get your mind going. Again, the examiner is not there to make you feel nervous. The examiner is there to make you feel comfortable. So they will also pick up on that and try and help you as well. But just make sure that if you don't understand the question during the exam, it is totally okay to ask. So make sure you do ask. All right. Again, you could get too conscious to speak. I mean, like we spoke about before, do practice and make sure that you are confident. Practice wherever you can. Practice speaking in English. All right. A lot of us are very comfortable speaking in our native language to communicate, especially for the IELTS exam. And if you're looking to go abroad, it's best that you start practicing in English. Practice speaking in English and get that going. Don't worry about being wrong, just practice. And that's what will give you the confidence. All right. I do not see any more questions coming in. So if we don't have any more questions, I think we'll end this talk here. If you do have questions, once this talk is over, if you think of something regarding the IELTS speaking exam or any other part of the exam, that's totally fine as well. Go ahead and log on to nebula.com and post your question there in the form of a request. And once your question is answered, you will be notified. All right, so I guess this talk is coming to an end. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really nice to have you all. Again, my apologies for the delay. because of technical issues, but we're glad to have got this started again. I hope this talk was insightful for you guys today. If you know anybody else who is preparing for the IELTS exam and you thought that this video would be helpful for them, do share it with them. Once the recording is available, you will be notified and you will be able to watch it. So you can share it with your friends. Do take this time to connect with all the people who are there on today's talk, as well as myself. You can connect with me on nebula.com, where you'll be able to get updates about upcoming events and upcoming talks as well. All right, we have a number of them lined up for you, so do keep an eye on that. All right, then I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you for the next talk.